What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Comic Swag. If it's your first time here, welcome. Today we're going to be covering X-Men issues 101, 102, 103, 104, and 105. Now, this material took place between October of 1976 all the way up to June of 1977. So this issue starts off with Jean Grey and the X-Men coming from space down to Earth, and she's flying this space shuttle. She has to land it, and she's using her telekinetic powers to do so because the spaceship cannot run. What the hell were the X-Men doing in space? Well, check out episode 8 so you can see why they were up there. So now they're coming back down to Earth. Very rough landing. They land in the ocean. The space shuttle just falls apart right into a million pieces. Other X-Men are swimming around in the water. And then you see Jean Grey fly from the ocean into the air. And we had not previously seen her fly before. So now we're like, holy crap. And she's wearing a whole new costume. And she now says her name is the Phoenix. Okay, so right off the bat, gotta say, I'm really digging this new outfit of Jean Grey's. And excuse me, she is now the Phoenix. She has this green costume with some gold on it. Really pops. That green really goes with her red hair. So I'm liking what they're doing here with the colors. And this is a nice design. I think Dave Cockrum really knocked it out of the ballpark with this one. So she's flying in the air, and then she just kind of faints and falls back in the ocean. Cyclops grabs her, brings her back ashore. All the X-Men get out of the ocean, and they're right next to Kennedy Airport in New York. They rush her to the hospital. She's very weak because she used a lot of her powers to fly all the X-Men all the way from space to Earth. So that's quite a journey that she had to be using all this energy, right? So she's exhausted. She's in the hospital. All the X-Men are there rooting for her. They really don't know what's happening, right? The doctor tells them she's gonna be fine. So everybody's excited. And Cyclops is just like really stressed out because it's his girlfriend and he thought maybe she would be dying, right? So he's really stressed out about everything that happened. And they're not even really acknowledging at this point that she has a new costume and a new name, right? As this is going on, Cassidy, aka Banshee, he gets a letter saying he has inherited this castle back in Ireland from Mr. Flannery. So he's telling other X-Men, hey, let's go check out this castle, right? So they all need some time to unwind. They just came back from space. So they're like, that would be great. Let's go to Ireland and just chill back for a while. Now that the X-Men have had this long road trip to Ireland, we get a nice view of the castle. It's next to the ocean on this big rock, like a big mountain. It looks super sus to me, right? Like, this looks very fishy. I'm looking at this castle and it has a horror vibe to me, right? It doesn't look appealing. Once all the X-Men are in the castle, they're checking it out. It's huge. There's all kinds of rooms. They're at awe, right? Like, wow, there's so much space and it's so roomy. They're checking out all the rooms. Everybody picks a room to stay in, right? And Storm makes herself right at home. She immediately gets naked. She goes, I feel much comfortable when I'm nude. So I was like, whoa. So come on, Chris Claremont, do better. I never liked this idea of Storm being a nudist and constantly being naked. I was not a fan of it, right? Like, she constantly does this for no reason in the early years. So anyway, that's enough of my little rant here about that. So let's get back to this eerie castle. Later on that night, all the X-Men decide to all get dressed up and have a nice dinner and kind of relax. Almost like they're hitting a club, right? Or a fancy party, right? With a high fashion and stuff. Everybody looks really dressed up and nice. So it looks like they're going to have a good time. And walking to the dining room area, bam, the floor disappears from under them. So they fall into this trap door and, this totally sucks because I wanted to see the X-Men just have a good time for a while. They've been through a lot these last few days, right? Once the X-Men land on the bottom floor, we are introduced to Black Tom Cassidy. So he's Banshee's evil cousin. He's like, hey, it's me, Black Tom, and I'm here with my friend Juggernaut. And he hates Professor Xavier. So me and him together are gonna kill the X-Men because you guys are his students. It was quite an issue. That was issue 101. Now when we get to issue 102, It's just basically a big fight scene between Banshee and his cousin Black Tom Cassidy. We saw that huge guy Juggernaut, so we want to see him fight the X-Men's Colossus, right? So they're just going at it as well, just wailing on each other. And we get something I found more interesting actually, is that because they felt underground, Storm, she started getting really panicky, and it's revealed to us that she's claustrophobic because of something that happened in her youth. So here now we touch a little bit on Storm's background, and that's where the real story is at in this issue. And it says here, back in 1951, when she was a child in Harlem, her and her parents were moving to Kenya, right? So once they moved over there, she kind of vaguely remembers about the city in New York. And in Kenya, she became, her parents died there because this, like a building got knocked over, right? It fell on top of them, fell on top of her. And this is kind of how she became claustrophobic because of this whole situation she had in her youth. There, she became a thief, like to survive, and with other kids that were running around in the streets, and basically just doing whatever she can, right, to get by. And that's where she learned to be a nudist and kind of learned about her mutant powers to control the weather and so forth. So it was nice to kind of touch on her background a little bit, flesh out the character a little more. Storm is so panicked during this situation that Professor Xavier, even though she's in Ireland and he's in New York, he could feel her fear through his telepathic powers, right? He's like, the Storm is reaching out to me. He tells Cyclops, you gotta go help them. Cyclops says, no, Professor, not this time. I'm staying here at the hospital until Jean is out of danger. So they have an argument. He's defying Professor Xavier. People think he's a Boy Scout and always listens. He actually argues with him a lot more than you would think, right? So then here Professor Xavier says, you're what? You're putting the life of one woman ahead of the whole team? And Cyclops stands his ground. He says, I'm not going. Now, while Professor Xavier is saying, you unappreciative fool, and he's just letting, he's verbally attacking Cyclops, right? And why this happens, in the mirror, he sees Lilandra. Now, who is Lilandra? Well, Professor Xavier lately has been having a lot of nightmares about space and about this princess in space. And now he sees her reflection in the mirror, and that's her. She's Lilandra. She's kind of telepathically reaching out to him, even though they don't know each other. So we've been building this character up, slightly showing her through dreams and so forth for the last few issues. So now we jump back to Ireland to see what's going on with the X-Men. We see Juggernaut just slap Wolverine around. And then he targets Colossus. Colossus is pretty big, so he could kind of hold up a fight for a second. Lands a few hits. But then at the end of the day, Juggernaut's bigger and stronger still. So at the end of this issue, you see Juggernaut just lifting Storm and Colossus. They're both just unconscious. He looks real menacing here. And it gives you a pretty good idea of how powerful this guy is, right? Like, he's a real threat. Issue ends right there. Now, in the beginning of the next issue, all the X-Men are shackled up. They've been captured. Juggernaut pretty much took care of the whole team. And Black Tom Cassidy took care of Banshee. So the only one they did not capture was Nightcrawler. He has this watch on his hand that makes him, he could turn into, so he could look like a human, right? Because he's blue and he looks kind of demonic. So he could just fit in on the day-to-day situations, right? With your average human. And he uses this watch to change and look like Professor X. Because we know Juggernaut is really looking for Professor X. So he goes, hey, it's me, Professor X. He shows up. Juggernaut immediately attacks him without thinking twice, right? And this Professor X is very agile and quick and whatnot, right? So Juggernaut can't beat him. Nightcrawler's taking him his best shot, right? And he's kind of beating Juggernaut here because he's using speed and he can disappear and reappear. He's not fighting him with muscle because he would lose that way, right? So he's kind of outsmarting him. And this made Nightcrawler look real heroic, and he kind of freed the X-Men from the shackles, and he had his moment to shine here. As the X-Men escape right here, Banshee was not able to escape. He's still shackled up. Juggernaut picks him up, and he goes to the top of the castle, and he says,
I'm gonna drop this guy all the way down if you guys don't come over here.
So they go, it's obviously some type of trap. When we go up there, we're not gonna be able to beat him, right? He's too strong. But we have to save Banshee. So Storm looks at this, and since she could fly, she immediately just flies to the top of the castle. And Wolverine says, "What are you doing, you dumb broad?" And Colossus tells him, "Don't ever call her a dumb broad." And he warns Wolverine. While those two are arguing, Nightcrawler disappears and appears on top of the castle, and he unties Banshee. So now we're back to another big fight scene. Everybody going at it again. Except this time, since they're on top of the castle, somehow Juggernaut falls, like where he was standing. When he falls to the bottom, all the X-Men gang up on him. While all the X-Men are fighting Juggernaut, Black Tom Cassidy rushes towards Banshee. He's about to hit him with an axe. And Banshee ducks down, throws him over the castle onto the ocean. So when he lands on the ocean, Juggernaut stops fighting and he says, "Oh no, my friend, if anything happened to him." And he doesn't hesitate to jump off the freaking castle onto the ocean to try to save his friend's life. Now in the last panel here, we see some guy from space talking to Eric the Red through a teleprompter, right? And he's telling him the princess must not reach the X-Men. Do not let her talk to Professor Xavier. And Eric the Red says, "She'll never reach Earth. If she does, I've contacted the X-Men's greatest foe, Magneto." So Eric the Red is working with someone in space, and they're looking for this princess that's the one that's trying to contact Professor Xavier. So it looks like there's things going on a bigger scope here, right? Okay, now that we were done dealing with Juggernaut, we jump onto the next issue. It starts off with the X-Men. They're back in America. They want to go look for Dr. Moira McTaggart, so they're renting this boat. Now when they're out in the middle of the ocean, the boat explodes. So we don't know what caused this. But the X-Men wind up being on shore, right in the sand somewhere. They get washed away by the ocean onto land. And this seems to be a thing with Cockrum always on the second page. He has this big explosion, and it's the same type of two-page spread. Last time it was a plane, now it's a boat. So now when they're on the land picks up, and it lifts all the X-Men with it, right? And it guides them into these headquarters. We don't know what this place is, like a fortress. Banshee, he's an older X-Men, so he's like only one person can be capable of this. We get introduced to Magneto. Now Magneto looks badass right here. He's very muscular, very imposing, and he looks better than any previous interpretation of Magneto up to this point. In my opinion, he's slightly modified and tweaked. Looks way better. And he's telling the X-Men, "Oh, you're a new pair of X-Men. He's like the old ones I dealt with." And we jump back to Cyclops and Dr. Moira McTaggart. Now she's telling Cyclops we have this secret, like a secret layer, right? Taking him there. And Cyclops is a little bit pissed off. He had previously argued with Professor X. So he's already kind of, they're not getting along at this moment, right? And then now he gets further pissed that he goes, "He had a secret layer this whole time, and I'm his number one. And he didn't let me know about this. What kind of trust does that show, right?" He's kind of disappointed in that. McTaggart tells him, "Don't linger on that right now. We have more important things to get to." She's showing him the quarters, and we have Multiple Man here. Now, this guy is a newer character. He was, his first appearance was in Fantastic Four, I believe, a little bit before this. And now he's going to be joining the X-Men, because now he's been labeled a mutant, so he will be in the X-Men universe. He's explaining to Moira McTaggart, "Oh, I was ambushed." And he lets her know there was this guy named Eric the Red. He showed up with Havoc and Polaris. They jumped him. And he said once they did this, they grabbed Magneto. And at this point, he explains that Magneto was a child. He was a baby. And this guy, Eric the Red, with his powers, made him back into a full-grown adult. So this tells us why Magneto is back in town as an adult, right? How did Magneto become a baby? It says here, it's explained in Defenders issue 16. This happened while X-Men didn't have their own ongoing title. So the characters were just making appearances on other people's books. So now we know Big Bad Magneto's back, and Eric the Red tells them, "We brought you back to life, basically, because we want you to help us destroy the X-Men, and nobody knows them better than you." Cyclops hears this, and he says, "These new X-Men have no idea who Magneto is and how powerful. They don't stand a chance. I have to go help them," right? So he runs off looking for them. Now we jump back onto the X-Men. And they're having this big fight scene with Magneto, as expected, right? Funny here is that as he's saying this, he quickly just manhandles Colossus and Wolverine, because Wolverine has metal skull and Colossus has metal skin, and Magneto controls metal, right? So he just tosses them around, not really struggling at all. His big threat would be Banshee, because Banshee's a little more familiar with him, but even then he turns Banshee into stone. Somehow his powers can work the molecules, the iron we have in our system, and he turns them into stone. I'm not really sure how science works, but if he was able to do this to him, he would have been able to do this to other X-Men, right? Anyways, he turns Banshee into stone. Cyclops shows up. How the hell did Cyclops show up so fast from wherever the hell he was at with Moira McTaggart? Have no idea. Here, so we're just gonna let it ride, right? We're just gonna go along with it. And he's attacking Magneto as well. Now here, as Cyclops is fighting with Magneto, he says, as soon as we find Colossus, we're pulling out of here and we're heading for New York. Wolverine, he tells him, the places we are, bub. This fight ain't over yet. Then Cyclops tells him, it is as far as I'm concerned. Wolverine says, says who? Cyclops says the X-Men team leader, Buster. Now do as I say. Okay, so that's crazy. He's just bullying Wolverine again, and Wolverine always kind of has something back to say. He's kind of like the child that won't listen to his father, right? So he always has to scold him, right? Now as the X-Men retreat, Wolverine says, hey Summers, you can justify this till the day we die, but it won't justify the fact that we ran and you made the X-Men look like cowards. Something Wolverine will never forgive you for. Then we jump to the next panel, and Magneto is bragging about how the X-Men are scared of him, and he's triumphant once again. Now in the next page, we pretty much get to the end of this issue, and it says scene shift, and we're in space now, right? And we get introduced to the Starjammers for the first time, as far as I know. And here we have Corsair and Chode. They're new characters here, so they're introducing us to them and letting us know who they are. And they're saying we have to stop the Emperor, right? Because he's trying to come look for Lilandra. And Lilandra's coming to Earth to look for Professor Xavier. So we're starting to be introduced to all kinds of new players, right? And we're starting to hint at space a lot here. When the issue ends, this has happened a few times. It's kind of become a trope where Eric the Red, Polaris, and Havoc are looking through a window and seeing Professor Xavier. He's talking to Jean Grey and her parents, right? And they're just kind of seeing what Professor X is up to, because they know Lilandra will eventually show up wherever Professor X is. When we start the next issue, this will be the final issue of this video. It's issue 105 of X-Men. We get introduced to yet another new character. His name is Firelord. Now it turns out he's in the Thor comic book, so he's like one of Thor's characters, but he's the first time appearing in the X-Men comic, right? So he's attacking the X-Men. We're not clear why. Turns out Eric the Red is manipulating him. He's telling him, oh, the X-Men are bad, mutants are bad, and I'm a good guy, so I'm here to help you. Let's stop these guys. So the X-Men get into a big battle with this guy. He retreats for the time being with Eric the Red, and he sees Polaris and Havoc and finds out they're mutants. So he starts attacking them. He says, yes, our mutants are bad. He goes, Eric the Red, what are you doing with these guys? He says, I believe I've been deceived by them. Yes, they're all bad, and I'm the good one, right? So again, he's manipulating Firelord. Then the next scene, we jump to a scene where we're in space again, and we're introduced to the Share Empire. We have all these characters here, and this totally reminds me of Star Trek. The guy in the middle just looks like a Captain Kirk, and then you have his crew, right? All his members to the right and to the left. Even his posture is very reminiscent of Star Trek. I could almost guarantee Dave Cockrum looked at a Star Trek picture and for reference, right, when he drew this. So I guess they're kind of supposed to be the space characters that bring peace to the galaxy, but they're on the Emperor side because they think the Emperor's correct and Lilandra has gone rogue. But Lilandra wants to expose that the Emperor has this villainous plan, right, and that he's actually evil. Now we're back with Professor Xavier. He's having coffee with Jean Grey and her parents. And Jean Grey is introducing the group to Misty Knight. She's saying, oh, this is my new roommate. And it totally makes sense because they live in New York. and real estate, rent and whatnot, it's expensive when you're in the big cities. So she needs to share the rent with somebody, right? Makes things a lot easier. And as she's introducing them, an astronaut appears right through like a portal, much like in Star Trek again. And one of the characters even says, "Oh, look, she's appearing like those portals in Star Trek." So when this astronaut takes off her helmet, Professor Xavier is shocked. He's like, "Oh my God, it's the woman in my dreams." And he explains to them, "I've been seeing her in my dreams. She's been trying to contact me. So I almost feel like I know her, even though we have never met." And she speaks a different language because she's from a different planet. But him, with his telepathic powers, he's trying to like figure out the language and just read her thoughts. While this is happening, Fire Lord strikes again with Eric the Red, knocking Lilandra unconscious. They finally found her. Misty Knight takes out a gun right here. In any other situation, she would feel real imposing, right? But here, you're in a scene with a bunch of people that can fly and lift buildings. A gun seems like you're very undermanned, right? You're underpowered here. So Jean Grey turned into the Phoenix, and she's like, "Oh, here we go, man!" And she gets into this big fight scene with him, and she lets him know she's more powerful than he is. Hands him his ass. He wasn't really that much of a match for her. So while all this is happening, Eric the Red grabs Lilandra, who is passed out. He takes her to the roof because in the roof he has this teleporter that will teleport him back to space. So the X-Men show up and they chase him up the roof. And when they get there, he goes through the portal. And Professor Xavier is in a rage. He's like, "Oh, we have failed with all the powers we have. We could not save Lilandra. And she was not able to tell me what's going on." He explains to Professor Xavier that with her new powers, she can reopen this teleport, right? So she reopens it, and now the X-Men jump into the teleport. So now they're all gonna appear in space, right? So now they're all gonna appear who knows where. We're assuming somewhere in space. Issue ends right there. Damn, there was a lot of moving pieces here. We got introduced to a lot of new characters and action scene after action scene. It's like everything felt like it was moving so fast. I felt really overwhelmed here. Like I couldn't even remember all the characters' names. So hopefully in the next issues, things slow down a little bit, right? But that's all we have for this episode today. I really enjoyed this one. Hopefully you guys did too. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. I can't wait to tune in for the next episode, and go ahead and also hit that subscribe button. That will notify you on your feed when that next episode goes up. Other than that, I'd just like to thank you guys for taking some time out of your day, checking out the video, and I'll check you guys out next time.